My name is Giselle. This is Slow Food Live. Slow Food Live is a project of Slow Food USA. This session is part of a partnership we're doing with 10 Speed Press and Clarkson Potter. We have had a delightful lineup of authors and cooks join us in the last couple months, and it's been really so much fun, and we've spanned so many different food cultures and traditions. So I personally have been just so excited at every single one. I am especially excited today. Hawa, I got your book a few weeks ago and it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm really excited to start cooking from it. It's so unique, and I agree with you on all counts as far as grandmothers go. So this book really speaks to my heart, and I'm really excited to have you today and appreciative of your time. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you so you can tell everyone a little more about yourself. Just a note to everybody that's watching, I will send you a follow-up email after this session with a link to the recording of the session if you want to cook along or watch again, and we'll send the recipe as well so you can follow along at another time. Hawa, thanks again, and I'll hand it over to you from here.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be joining you all. It's obviously late where I'm at in New York City. But I'm envious of the people who are still in daylight on the West Coast, or, well, some of us are in Guatemala, which means it's warm. But I'm here today. I'm going to be sharing a dish called sukimo from Kenya. It is greens with tomato. It's made with all of the spices that I talk about in the cookbook, which is like cardamom, cumin, well, coriander, cumin, turmeric are the backbone of this dish. It's super simple. The name actually means to stretch the week. It's a dish that can serve as a side or as a full course meal. Someone is saying something, I agree. Oh. So let's get started. I've already got my 2 tablespoons of, I'm using olive oil. It calls for actually any type of oil you have at home. We say canola there, but you can also use olive oil. So I've got a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in there. I'm gonna warm this, and then I'll throw in a teaspoon of cumin. Yeah, cumin, coriander, and then a half a teaspoon of diasporico turmeric, along with my onion, and I'll let that soften for about 5 minutes. There we go. Is anyone else making anything yummy tonight? Tell me in the notes or in the chat, not really the notes. Hopefully I don't look too dark.
You look great. This is all great. Go ahead and tell us if you're cooking along with Hawa right now or if you're cooking something else. Dee, quick and fast, if you can let us know the page number of the dish in your book.
Oh yeah, it's 121.
121. Perfect. Excellent.
I've got my greens here. I took the stems out, chopped them coarsely. I've got my tomatoes here, also coarsely chopped. I've got a fresh lemon, which I'm gonna squeeze and get some lime juice out, and then I've got my salt. This dish is super simple and doesn't call for much, but it's really flavorful. So I'll give this a stir. Fold everything together. Oh, my house is gonna start smelling so good. What is everyone's favorite spice? Is there a spice that you make all of your meals with? Or one you can't make your meals without? Soon we're gonna have some time to chat, because once I put the tomatoes and the greens and the salt and the water together, it's gonna be 15 minutes of just letting it simmer and soften. So
we've got cumin, garlic, turmeric, more garlic.
Is that what everyone's saying? Garlic, oh, coriander, chili powder.
I'm big into allspice, as in following with my own grandmother.
I'll show anyone who's interested my pantry if you could see it. But I've got like everything you could think of. All right, our onions are coming along. So this is a dish that is traditionally eaten across East Africa. Greens are readily available It's super cheap. Again, the name of the actual dish means to stretch the week. You know, that means it's affordable. It can be eaten many different ways. You can eat it if you're a meat lover. You can eat it if you're a vegan, a vegetarian. So it's a friendly dish across the board. It's been about 5 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump our pound of greens in. Oh yeah, they smell really good. We'll go ahead and do some salt before I add the tomatoes and the water. And just do a pinch of salt. I'm gonna get my juice out of my, actually I'll save that for the end. I'll put my water in. And I'm using a heavy pot. I'm using my Dutch oven so that my greens don't scorch. I want them to cook evenly. It's a trick I learned from burning things.
Karen is asking what kind of greens you're using.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, Karen is asking what kind of greens you're using.
Oh, so I'm just using, I'm using collard greens, but you could use kale, you can use any greens you have on hand. And I got these at Trader Joe's. I don't want you guys to think I was being fancy and went anywhere that that you can't go or something, or that isn't available in your neighborhood. All right, I'm gonna throw my tomatoes in. Has anybody learned any new cooking tricks during the pandemic? Just fold everything together. Where's my wooden spoon? I need it. I'll cover this. I'll keep it on medium heat and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. And then in the end, I'll pour my lime or lemon juice over it. Should we start talking about the spice trade? Any questions about the book?
Let's see. We don't have questions about the book yet, but I encourage you to put them in the Q&As, and we'll get to them later. I think it would be great if we start talking about the spice trade and whatever else you have to teach us.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that it could be an exchange, but I'll just talk about a little bit of inspiration about what I do and who I am and where I've come from. I'm Hawa Hassan. I'm born in Somalia. The city I was born in is Mogadishu, and we have the long inland coast in all of Africa. And so we're right on the Indian Ocean. You can imagine how that's influenced colonization, the way that, you know, Africa was entered through the ocean, the way that the East African countries were affected. And so my parents grew up in Italy, Somalia. That's what it was called until 1960. Both of my parents are born in Mogadishu. And my father actually went to school in Russia. And so we were all over the place as a country. I came to love Somali cuisine and stories pertaining to that part of the world when I went looking for myself. I was separated from my family in 1993. I was sent to live in Seattle with a group of family friends. I ended up being there from the age of 7 until I was 19 years old. And then in 2008, I decided it was time to reunite with my family, who ultimately ended up moving from Kenya to Oslo. Once I got there, I realized there were a lot bits about myself I'd been running away from, and the main one being really what it meant to be Somali, and what had always reminded me of home in Seattle was food. But I created this whole new life for myself, which was so separate from who I was growing up, so that I wouldn't miss home, so that I could cope with my new world. I started to assimilate. I really just got away from who I think that my parents ultimately wanted me to be, which was a girl who is the eldest in the family, who takes care of the family, who cooks, who goes to school, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I got into the food industry because I saw as I found myself, I saw that there was a larger story that was missing from the narrative, which was African cuisine. And so I put my Condiments Basbaas on the market in 2014. From there on, I went on to, probably people here know, but went on to become one of the people at the test kitchen, and then moved on to creating in Bibi's kitchen, my first cookbook, which is based on the 8 African countries that border the Indian Ocean. And it's exploration of recipes through conversations with grandmothers. There's so many questions. All right.
Quick.
Okay.
Quick. We got plenty of questions for you.
Hi, Brianne. Brianne also works on this book.
Excellent. Perfect. So there's a lot of questions about how you either chose or found the grandmothers that show up in your book. And also, this is a question from Brianne, which is a good one. Did you have ideas of what recipes might come to be included in the book, or did you sort of follow your lead with the grandmothers? The Bibis, which I imagine means grandmother.
Yeah, so 24 of the recipes in the book are from the grandmothers. There's 75 recipes in the book. So all the recipes are not from the grandmothers. But what I was sure about was that we were going to feature recipes that were the backbones of these countries. Like, you can't talk about Eritrea without talking about shuro, which is ground chickpea stew. You can't talk about, that part of the world without talking about dorowat, which is chicken drums in a stew. So I knew that we would talk about the recipes that were the backbone of Somalia, of Tanzania, with the pilaf. Like, grandmothers didn't make pilaf. We went into their homes and we said, cook for us what you make for your family every day. So they weren't gonna make elaborate dishes, because no one makes an elaborate dish every day. So we took the 24 recipes that they gave us, or the 24 dishes that they gave us and made recipes out of, but the rest are really foods that reflect each single country. What was the other question?
Perfect. How did you find the grandmothers that were included in the book?
I tell everyone this, but through my community. I lived in Cape Town when I was 23 years old, so I reached out to my friend Faith, who lives there. It's her aunt who's featured in the book. I lived in Kenya for some time, so I reached out to my friends there. It's their moms who are in the book. I reached out to a friend who's Eritrean, who I grew up with in Seattle, Mikey, and he set me up with both of the Eritrean grandmothers. And so I tell everybody this, like, don't wait to develop community. Root yourself where you are and plant yourself. Be of service to other people so that when you need people, they show up for you.
That's wonderful. I love that perspective. Carol is asking to see the book, and I happen to have it right here next to me. So we'll get 2 views. It's beautiful. The design is fantastic, and I think it's really unique because of the way you categorize the book. So if I might insert a little question here, your choice to categorize the book by country is unique. That's not often how we see cookbooks categorized. Like, was that challenging in any way? Or
not at all.
And how did, I think the opposite of challenging, how did it sort of shape the narrative that you're able to offer in that book?
So the thread of this book is the Indian Ocean, because ultimately what I was interested in doing was making the world smaller, especially for people in the West, right? So I know that people are familiar with the Indian Ocean. And so the way that the book is categorized is the way that the Indian Ocean enters Africa. That's why Eritrea is first.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And Sue is wondering how you came to work with Julia Turshen.
Julia in 2015 interviewed me after, I guess 2016, she interviewed me after the Muslim ban about being an activist. I used to get a group of people together and order pizza and sit on the floor to talk about how we could be of service to people who needed documents, or, people who were dreamers, et cetera, et cetera. And so she interviewed me for that in 2015 or 2016. And then she asked me to do her Feed the Resistant book. And then after that, I think we'd become friends. I did a Somali recipe for that book. And shortly after that, I became one of the advisors for Equity at the Table. And in 2017, I told her about this idea I had, which she recently posted about it on Instagram, the actual text. And the rest is history.
Great. I'm going to throw a link for Equity at the Table in the chat. It's a really wonderful way to learn about people in the food world, women in particular.
Directory.
Yeah. So someone is wondering how you ended up in New York. Why you decided to settle in New York if in fact you're settled there.
when I graduated high school when I was 16, and my senior year of high school, as I was heading to college, my best friend was a model, and her agent Paige said to me, "You should really move to New York. You should model and move to New York." And I was like, "Yeah, but I gotta go to school." I did for a few years, and then I moved to New York. I moved to Brooklyn, where I've been since.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see. I am just trying to track. If you can throw your questions in the Q&A for me, that's excellent. They're a little harder to find in the chat. Joe is wondering when your sauces will be available again.
Oh, Joe, have you seen we're sold out?
That's great, except for Joe and me.
You know, COVID has really done a number on us in a good way and in a bad way. And so right now we're having a bit. Sorry, there was like a ringer, but right now we're having a bit of an issue with our supply chain. We're waiting on some jars to come in, but hopefully within the next week.
Excellent. I had a friend here that told me that for a time in this very homestead town that there was not a single jar available in the entire town. So I hear that. There's some strains. I'm going to ask you another question for me, which is in the story you put in your book about yourself, you talk about reconnecting with your mother and cooking with her. And you mentioned a few dishes in there that you cooked with her when you visited her in Norway. And did those dishes make their way into the book? And how does that sort of translate into this journey?
Oh, yeah. So it's my mom's Sugo Suqaar, it's my mom's beef suqaar, it's my mom's shah, it's my mom's hawaj, it's my mom's green sauce. The whole of Somalia is her.
Perfect. Yeah. This is appropriate to me.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's see. Are there any ingredients and this is a good question from Sue, are there any ingredients in the book that might be hard to find in the stores in the United States?
Absolutely not. So that's exactly, what's the name of the person who asked?
Sue.
Hi, Sue. So that's exactly what this book is about, demystifying that African food is not, it's not hard. We want to get rid of the idea that African food is far and difficult to make. And the intention is to say that in your everyday pantry, you can make this. That's why we're making this. And the base of this is coriander, cumin, turmeric, and salt. So no, and if there is anything that to you doesn't seem familiar, we teach you how to make berbere. And now you can go and buy berbere. I mean, I got lazy the other day and I went to Shahadi's and I bought a whole thing.
Perfect.
So there's nothing in here that is far out. Tamarind paste, you know about tamarind paste. I
feel like we're lucky. We're living in a time when so much more is available, especially, even at Trader Joe's. There's some spices and pastes and things on the shelves there that we might not have seen 10 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
And I had the same thought in opening up your book. I thought these are vegetables and rice and meats and spices, all things that I have or have access to. It's a very accessible cookbook, which is really nice.
Absolutely.
Another question, is there one recipe in the book that gave you any trouble while doing recipe testing?
I don't know about trouble, but there was one recipe that I was really afraid of because I'm not Tanzanian. And, each country has their prized dish that they will fuss about. And for them, it's their pilau. So I popped tooth and nail. I was like, it has to get tested again. There's too much salt. And people were like, calm down. But yeah, it was the one dish that I sent to 4 or 5 friends to test because I was like, I don't know that this is turning out the way that Tanzanians would approve.
Yeah, I imagine that's a bit of a challenge, or at least something that probably lingers in your mind as you're writing a book about food cultures that are different. What's your recommended spice grinder for those of us who make various spice blends ourselves?
I don't have a spice grinder. I know that a lot of my friends use their coffee grinder, which works perfectly, but it's not here. I took it over, I took it on vacation and I didn't bring it back, but I have this bowl, like a morsel, and that's what I use. And so just having that and then the little, old school, taking your dry chilies. So I've got dry chilies like this. So this is how like my spices are. I'm gonna just show everybody. So I just have my spices like that. And then I just grind them. Sometimes even if I can't find my grinder, I'll use like a bottle, like an old bottle, and just go over it again and again.
Excellent. I'm gonna go ahead and take the liberty of throwing a link in for my favorite spice grinder, which is a tiny little cast iron apparatus that works really, really well and won't make your coffee. It's got a little top, and it just is a nice little spin, and it's cast iron, so it's heavy. And the molcajete, or like mortar and pestle style, you want it to be heavy, right? So it doesn't.
Yeah, I have a heavy like mortar and pestle thing that I have, but I don't know why it's not here. I got it at the African market in Albany.
Yeah. I think you can find it at a lot of Mexican markets as well, because it's just like a necessary item in any kitchen that's making Mexican food, really any food, honestly.
Yeah.
Let's see, from Samantha, what is your recommendation for drying out fresh herbs to use later?
Okay, I don't know how a lot of people do it, but oftentimes I put my herbs in towels like this, and I'll dry them, put them in here, or I'll just take regular paper towels and just lay them across like that out of the sun. So maybe sometimes here on my counter. But also if I want to keep them fresh, I take my mason jars, I fill them up with water, and I just like plant them.
Yeah.
And it works. It works great.
Excellent. Perfect. Okay, let's see. Very thoughtful to use an accessible green. Are there any unusual greens that you have used and enjoyed? From Cornelia.
Any greens? No, I've recently during COVID gotten into mustard greens. But no, I don't think that's unusual.
Right. Yeah, and I love that. Another thing that I love about your book is that, and I want to ask you about home cooking, and I think you have a great perspective about home cooking, and that's sort of the seat of food culture and preserving food culture, I think, happens at home, which I very much agree with. And how does that sort of translate into being able to use the greens you have on hand, or whatever sort of meat you have on hand? There's sort of a flexibility in a lot of these recipes, and is that connected to home cooking and saying to these grandmothers, make us what you make for your family, which is not necessarily so structured all the time?
So absolutely, I want to answer this like in two parts. I think that like I'm a person who grew up just like eating what she could eat to survive, and I think that a lot of us growing up, even my friends who had everything at their table, it was like, you're gonna eat this and you're gonna enjoy it. And then something has happened in like the last 5 years where food has become this like picture perfect, neat. You've got to be an authority on taking a picture of it. It has to have the right light. It scared a lot of people away from going in the kitchen and making something nourishing, because there's this idea that it needs to look a certain way as opposed to taste a certain way, or transport you somewhere, or invoke a feeling, which I think that even peanut butter and jelly sandwich can do that. And so what I really wanted to convey in this book is that we all have grandmothers, and it's from one home cook to another. We're not trying to make anything perfect. We're not saying this is us and we're the authority and here's what we have to offer and we're going to teach you this. It's let's sit together and make this table longer together and learn together.
Beautiful. I love that.
I think I can just go ahead and put my lemon juice on it now.
Sounds good.
Ready.
So what are you looking for to know it's sort of ready for this step?
What am I looking for, Anne?
Yeah, to know that you're ready for the next step, putting the lemon juice on, or it's done cooking. Are the greens wilted?
They're wilted and they're bright green. but I also like in my mind know 15 minutes has passed, you know? Like, it's that thing, like when you're, I don't know how to explain it. I'm sure you know.
Yeah. You just
7 pots on and know which one is ready.
Perfect. I think that a wonderful thing that has come through in a lot of our Slow Food Live sessions with cookbook authors and cooks is to really trust your instincts, to kind of, instead of following so specifically, to just watch and smell and taste and trust your own instincts in your cooking.
And you can always fix it. Like food
Right.
is easy like that, you know? If there's too much salt, you could put water in it. If it's a little mushy, you could put a paper towel over it, put your, you know, your lid on top and let it soak the moisture up. Like you can always fix it.
Perfect. That's an encouraging sentiment. That's great. This is a great question, and I'm going to add to it a little bit. This is an anonymous person. So what are some of your favorite African restaurants in New York or in the US? And what I want to add to it is like, what do you hope to see in the US as far as representation and demystifying African food and making it sort of accessible and enjoyable for all of us?
Okay, so I'll start with my favorite restaurants. For West Africa, I really love Lennox Sapphire in Harlem. It's a Senegalese restaurant. I love their yassa. For like flavors of like the East, I really love Yemen Cafe, which is on Court Street in Atlantic in Brooklyn. I also love Gannett, which is an Ethiopian restaurant in Brooklyn. I love Anjera, which is in Flushing. Yeah, there's so many great African restaurants and great African chefs. I think my hope is that American people make themselves familiar with African food in the way that they have with Thai food, with Indian food, and now with Korean food. It's like, if you can make a meal that has 20 ingredients in it, you surely can teach yourself how to make one that has 6 or 7, you know? So I would love for African food not to be, you know, next and new and trendy, but everlasting in the way that Indian food has been.
Absolutely. I think something I've seen that I really love is really kind of leaning into the region or the country where it's from, that it's not just sort of West African or East African, that it's Senegalese or Ethiopian or Kenyan food. And this is something I hope to see more of for many food cultures.
And Africa's 54 countries.
Right, that's a lot, and distinct food cultures.
Yeah.
As a Middle Eastern person, been so happy to see, like, we're moving away from the Middle Eastern restaurant, and now we have Lebanese restaurants and Syrian restaurants and Jordanian. So I think it's a good pathway. Let's see. Betty is wondering if you are keen to explore other areas of Africa beyond the East via a book. She wholeheartedly agrees that African food narrative needs to be demystified because it's not hard or complex. And she has been eating and traveling her way across West Africa for a year. How wonderful. It's a culinary.
Is she still there? I'm jealous.
Betty, are you still there? Let us know in the chat. Where are you?
So my dear, dear, dear friend Yewande has a book coming out on Nigeria. And, you know, Nigeria is 180 million plus people. It's about the tribes in Nigeria, the many different pockets of their culture, mixed in with her identity and the layers of who she is, being a young person who grew up in Berlin in the US. And so that's a book that I'm looking forward to. It has over 100 recipes. My next project, fortunately for me, is going to be, you know, my intent is to use parts of who I am to bring things to life. I'm somebody who experienced civil war. I'm somebody who has experienced migration and, you know, dual identities in terms of I've grown up here, but then being from there. And so my next book, actually, someone earlier was saying that they're from Sierra Leone. And that's a chapter in that book. So it's not just Africa, it's all over the world, but there's that country in West Africa that's in it.
Perfect.
Like you said, I do believe that African countries deserve their own, you know, we have so many regional Italian cooking cookbooks. Mm-hmm. Why can't we have that for all over the world? Like, I want a book about cocada, you know, like I want an Indian book that just focuses on cocada. I do. I love food from that part of the world. And so I hope that that becomes like a normal thing.
Absolutely, me too. And to your point, there's 54 countries, and within each of those countries, each region has different food traditions, different ways of cooking, and I would also love to see that. And I love that we're seeing a little more of it. Let's see, Cornelia is asking if you can talk a bit about your ready-made sauces for those of us not already familiar with them.
So my condiment line is Basbaas, which means chili in Somali. It is a line of food that's focused. Originally, my intention was to make it to be at the table to start having conversations about African foods. And once that happened, I obviously was able to parlay that into a book and into a TV show. But it's a tamarind and date sauce that we have right now, and then a coconut and cilantro sauce. I'll show you guys the tamarind and date, or I'll show you all. I'm trying not to use gender pronouns. That's our tamarind and date sauce. So again, a lot of the spices that are reflected in the Indian Ocean are in here: cumin, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves. Tamarind is in here. Lots of turmeric, dates, cherry bomb pepper. And then our other condiment is a coconut cilantro sauce, which actually is in the book. I gave the recipe to the book.
Excellent. Sounds delicious. Susanna is wondering how East African food is often served. Is it family style or individual plates? And what are the different elements that make up a meal for a family?
It's communal. It is served for a group of people. Everyone pauses to eat together. I wish I can somehow make that a normal thing even in my own life. But it's something that's eaten together. It's 2 or more people who sit down and eat together. And it's all shared on one plate. There are no individual plates.
Excellent.
So in a place like Eritrea, you would have the flatbread, the anjera, and then you would have the many different sides go on top of it. Mm-hmm. Or in a place like Somalia, you would have a big dish. I'm sure you know about this, like that beautiful like tent dish that has flowers on it, like pink flowers and it's white. So you've got that dish, then you've got the rice and the meat and the sauces, and then like your teas and bananas all around.
Excellent. I love what a collective experience that kind of dining is, and it really brings people together. I agree. I wish we could do more of that. I think that's one of my greatest losses in COVID is like I like to eat with my hands. I like to just here, eat this, and I can't even hug my friends anymore, let alone feed them. Let's see, it's very, very different between families, countries, or regions like za'atar can be.
Not at all. So recently I've seen like a lot of the companies that are selling berbere here, they put salt in it, but traditionally berbere is not made with salt. And in most Ethiopian and Eritrean families, they make it similar.
Excellent. Can you tell us quickly what's in that spice mix?
Yes, so it's dried chilies, paprika. I'll just read it to you so I don't miss anything. Cumin, cardamom, cinnamon, mustard seeds or vinegary. I can't even find it, but okay. So yeah, black peppercorn, chilies, onion flakes, sweet paprika, ground ginger, nutmeg, cumin, cardamom, all of the earthy, warm spices. I just wanted to show everybody our finished product.
Gorgeous. It looks delicious. Suddenly I'm hungry.
I just wanted everyone to know we didn't forget, Yeah, for good measure, I'll just put little, can't go wrong with lime juice.
Perfect. What might you serve this dish with?
I mean, you can eat it like that by, as is, or you can have it with, you can have it as a side. So you can have a protein, you can have, if you wanted to have the baris in the dish, which is the Somali rice, you can have that. I probably will repurpose it in the morning and just put some, a few eggs on top of it, a few fried eggs. Then I might have it again tomorrow night with some fish. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very versatile, it seems. It's vegetal. It doesn't have any, anything that discounts it from any meal, really.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Lisa's wondering if you have any restaurant recommendations in the Bay Area. Don't know if you've spent as much time there as New York.
I don't, but there's so many great Ethiopian restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I did live there for a long time.
I circle back on Instagram. I'm gonna do some quarantining, and I'm going there for Thanksgiving.
Excellent. You can let us know. We've got some love coming in from Oakland. Excellent. Well, that's all for the questions, although it's still open. So if you have a question, throw it in here. I would love to know sort of, I think especially during quarantine, this has been an interesting thing to explore. Like, what are the dishes you go to? I'm always into, let's rethink the idea of comfort food. You know, it's not just like fatty, heavy food. That's certainly not my comfort food. And I'm curious what yours is. And also, I spend a lot of time studying and thinking about how food connects us to our identity. And I have certain foods that make me really feel like myself and connected to my family. And what are those dishes for you?
It's weird because before COVID, I had this idea of what home was through food. And, you know, like every Sunday I would make like a pasta sauce that reminded me of my mom, or I would make her pasta sauce, or I would make a beef dish that reminded me of her. But during COVID, the things that I really craved were greens. Like I ate a lot of broccoli, I ate a lot of cauliflower, I ate a lot of asparagus. Whatever was happening outside was so heavy for me that the way I was taking care of myself was roasting vegetables. And then, because I still did want the comfort of home, I ended up just like putting stuff like this on there, mitmita, which is a spice from home. It's an Ethiopian Eritrean spice that my best friend's family made for me. So I was using things like that. I was using halaj. It still was like flavors of home, but it wasn't traditionally things we eat at home. So I ended up using spices to really like transport myself home, because I didn't feel comfortable leaving New York and getting other people sick. But for me, food has really become like, I eat to eat with other people. So quarantine was kind of difficult in that way. I know you could relate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many people can. Eating is such a shared experience that it's been odd not sharing it. And also interesting to think about the things we go to. We do have a couple more questions. Are there any condiments or spices you travel with no matter what, no matter where you go? Or maybe that you look for when you get there?
Ooh, I eat a lot of hot sauce. I eat a lot of hot sauce, but I just showed you all the mitmita. It's like a pepper powder from Ethiopia, Eritrea. I travel with that in a Ziploc bag sometimes, not very classy. And then I really just love pepper sauce. Like I love pepper sauce from West Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana. I was in Ghana recently at the top of the year. And so I brought a lot of that back home. But mostly I love hot stuff. So even if I don't have, a hot sauce on me, I always ask for it wherever I go.
Excellent. I feel like pepper sauce and chili paste is like this wonderful global exploration because so many food cultures have their own. We had Sammy Tamimi and Tara Wigley on recently, and they were talking about a particular Palestinian chili sauce that Tara she says she puts it on everything. And I think it's so interesting because if you love pepper sauce or chili paste, there's often a version of it everywhere you go.
Absolutely. Or it's easy to make wherever you go.
Yeah. Let's see. Meredith is wondering what you will make for Thanksgiving or what you usually make.
So it's interesting. I'm not, years ago, someone asked me like a press thing. Someone was like, we'd like for you to do like a traditional Somali Thanksgiving. And I was like, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
Right.
My mom doesn't even know what it is. So I remember wanting to be in that article, but I was like, it'll go against everything I believe in. So I passed on it, thankfully. But I still have that same idea. Like Thanksgiving is not something I traditionally grew up celebrating. It's not something my family is aware of. And so I love making sides and going to people's homes. I love making candied yams. I love mashed sweet potatoes. I love like whipped mashed sweet potatoes. I love making stuffing. My best friend's mom makes an incredible stuffing. This year I'm spending it with some girlfriends of mine, and I'm committed to making a lamb.
Excellent.
I'm gonna make
favorite.
sour braised lamb.
Yum, yum. Yeah, I think it's a great, like, explore. I think we're moving away maybe a little bit from that traditional meal. Slow Food actually published a collection of recipes from indigenous chefs in North America. So we're encouraging people this month to explore that collection, sort of maybe in lieu of that traditional Thanksgiving meal. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to think about what else you can do. But I'm with you. I'll eat sweet potatoes in any form and every form at any time.
Me too. I have them right now in the refrigerator.
Always. Let's see. Every country seems to have a pancake or pepper sauce. And you're reading my mind because I had dumplings in mind when I said this. Are there dumplings or turnovers or whatever you want to call it in East African cuisine or in the book?
Yeah, in the book there are cardamom dumplings, but they're, another thing that we really wanted to explore, and I wanted to
show. Someone's trying to get a hold of you.
But I really wanted to explore all the commonalities between cuisines. And so there's a cardamom dumpling in the book, but it's sweet. So even in the way that we use a lot of the coconut milk and the spices, it's like sweet and savory depending on the country and where they are in the Indian Ocean. And so there are cardamom dumplings in the book. But I would say that like the most similar, especially traditionally the way that it's eaten, is our sambusas.
Delicious.
I know that you guys have them in your country.
Yeah. I think it's true that there's like a version of a turnover most places.
Yeah.
That you just fill a good dough with the local taste and flavors and spices. I want to play a little bit on you mentioning spices because I'd love for you to talk a little bit, I think we could do hours on the spice trade, of course, but a little bit about what you would like people to know about spices and maybe sourcing your spices. And you mentioned Diaspora Company, which is doing an amazing job of sort of informing people about what that looks like before it gets into your pantry.
Yeah. Traditionally people who make spices in other countries have been exploited. I think that the most interesting thing right now as a consumer is to educate yourself about where your products come from as best as you can, especially if you have the capacity to buy from a small grower. And so, like you said, Diaspora Co., Sana and her company are doing a wonderful thing in that they are transparent about their trade and the way that they source. Another company that is doing that is Burlap and Barrel. They source a lot from East African growers in Tanzania. And so I use a lot of their products as well. This is black lime and this is silk lime, all reflective of, this is from Turkey and this is from Guatemala, but a lot of their products are from Tanzania. So, what I try to do with all of the things that I use in my cooking is to just really be mindful in what not only I'm consuming, but what I'm sharing with other people, whether it be on my social media or on my dinner table. And so I'm mindful in that if you know anything about the spice trade, people were robbed of their lives. A lot of people suffered. A lot of countries were colonized just for black pepper. And so ways that I've tried to be supportive is just to purchase products from people who are doing the right thing and who are encouraging and growing a trade that feels fair.
Yes.
And one that's transparent.
Yeah, I was just going to say that transparency is out there and there are companies really letting you know where this stuff is coming from. It's, I think, more available now than it ever has been. And also more important, maybe not than it's ever been, it's always been important, but to look a little further, find out where it's coming from and who it's coming from. And I also am curious your take on, in the description of this session, we talked a little bit about African cooking lineages and how they really are everywhere, especially in the US, if you just sort of know what to look for and how to recognize that. And can you talk to me a little bit about like how African cooking has shown up or was essentially came here with African people and how it manifests in a lot of the food cultures and cuisines we have here?
Yeah, so what we made today, the greens, those are collard greens, right? So that's big part of the foods in the South. It's shown up in gumbo. It's shown up in rice dishes. It's shown up in a lot of the stews that are from the South that trace back to the Atlantic trade. And so, though I'm not an expert on foods from the South, there are some things like whether it's corn porridge, like in the book we have from South Africa something like pop, which is just cornmeal. We have it here in Ugali in Kenya. It's cornmeal. That's exactly what people in the South eat. It's grits. And so there are a lot of overlappings, name changes, but the same taste, the same technique in making that food. And so again, it just goes back to like educating yourself just about what your food is, what it is that you're putting on the table, and being mindful about what you consume, again, on social media and on your table.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I think it translates into both the ingredients and the traditions, and both of those things. The more we learn about it, I think the more we are sort of honoring where all this stuff comes from.
Absolutely.
We are a country of many cultures, and so it's all coming from somewhere.
Exactly. Even if you were just to say to yourself, like, I want to learn more about how rice is made or how corn is made, and you just focus on one or two things, the things you'll learn along the way are just mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
And the similarities, we were just talking about dumplings, like Italy, gnocchi, I think is a dumpling,
Yep. We have something called the Ark of Taste, which is a catalog of endangered and or culturally and historically significant ingredients. And one ingredient in that's sort of come to the fore and has become more popular is Carolina gold rice. And to your point, it's one ingredient. You can learn so much about food history, especially in the South, from this one ingredient if you just kind of dig in a little bit on Carolina gold rice. It's pretty fascinating.
Learned about magnolia sage. I was like, ah! And that's also from Carolinas.
Excellent.
Wow.
Let's see, I'm curious if any of you have any other questions. We're getting close to the hour, so I want to respect your time. Cornelia said you mentioned a TV appearance, and is that a regular show? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, well, that was on BA originally, but we have a show coming up on, I think I could say this now, on the Food Network, which is very similar to this, which is like, making our tables longer and our fences shorter.
Excellent. I'll certainly look out for that. That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, Hawa, it's been such a pleasure having you. I don't know if you want to throw anything else out here. Meredith is excited about your lamb, as am I. I'll sort of keep up with you and follow to see if we can get a peek at that. Good luck. Excellent. Good. I'm so excited to dig into this book, especially in the winter time and during COVID, because I think I'll just be cooking most of the time when I'm not working.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you and to meet you. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, this was painless. Thanks.
Good.